Hello and welcome to the Fat Boss Guide to the Spirit Kings, 10-man normal in the Mogu'shan vaults.
Hello, and there, this fight's good.
I love this fight.
It's a little bit more interesting.
It's a bit weird.
Although it's another fight with 4 bosses.
Yeah, it's got a little bit feeling.
Bit Omnitron style.
Yeah, but it's good. It's a very, very cool fight. Now, what you want to do is you want to bring 1 tank, 2 to 3 healers, and mixed DPS. Range being slightly more useful, to be honest.
Yeah, only slightly more useful, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So like I said, the encounter does consist of 4 bosses that you must defeat one by one. And they seem to be in a random order, or they almost every single time they're in a random order. Some orders being slightly more difficult than others because once one of the bosses is defeated, one of his abilities are carried over to the next boss. So if it's a particularly annoying ability, you'd prefer that boss to be last rather than first. Yeah. Because otherwise you have to put up with this fucking annoying ability throughout the whole fight.
Now we will cover the bosses one by one, and to start off we're going to talk about Kriang the Merciless, or something. Once active, the main ability that is carried over to the other bosses is flanking orders. Now basically this will spawn adds that will swing through the area of the room in a straight line. You have to move away from the wall.
Yeah, it's just a wall of swinging mobs. Avoid the wall, simple as that.
It's really cool though, it looks good.
And this is the ability that is carried over, so you need to keep that in mind. Now the abilities that aren't carried over is Massive Attacks and Annihilate. And Massive Attacks is a very high damage cleave attack, and it works very similar to the way that the swipe works in the Scorpion phase of Major Domo and Firelands, if you can remember back that far, fucking hell. So it's important that you stack on your tank pretty much the whole of this phase, so the damage is split amongst all the raid members. Now on top of this, he'll also do Annihilate, which is a massive shockwave that is kind of like the War Master Blackhorn in Dragon Soul. However, this instead of the shockwave like just stunning you and doing some damage, this will actually fucking kill you.
Yeah.
So you need to move out of it.
So that's the problem, is that you're stacking up in front of him, then you got to move away, and then you've got to stack back up in front of him. So try and move the same way if you can.
Yeah, and it's also important that because of the flanking orders, when they come out, that your tank communicates and says exactly which way he is running, because you can get flanking orders and massive attacks at the same time. So if your tank just fucks off as soon as the flanking orders comes out, he's just going to get destroyed by the massive attacks. So move as a group, move at the same time, and you'll be absolutely fine with that guy.
So now we're going to be moving on to Sebtai?
Sebtai.
The Swift guy, and the ability that will continue after his death is Pillage. This will charge at a random player, and all players within 8 yards after the cast on that location will lose their gear, reducing the damage and healing by 50%, and increases the physical damage you take by 50%. So you have to move from it.
It's just a spinning animation. Just move away from it before the cast finish.
Yeah, because it just fucks you over quite hard.
And his other abilities are Volley, which is a 3 like quick succession pulse of arrows in a very large cone in a certain area. And after each pulse, the cone actually will get smaller. And this is deadly on the last pulse, and realistically you shouldn't really get hit by like the second pulse. You probably get hit by the first, but the second one you shouldn't. The best way to counter this is just make sure you're not standing miles away from the boss, and that you just react to it as quick as you possibly can, so you don't take the extra damage.
The other ability that he does is Rain of Arrows. Now basically he fires a rain of arrows at a location of a player, pinning them to the ground, and all targets within 8 yards of them to the ground also. To unpin the player, you need to destroy the arrow, so it's kind of like the bone spikes kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's similar to that. We worked out that if you have all players in melee range apart from 3 players, then the arrows will only ever be targeted on the 3 range players. Now you can take advantage of this by using classes to cheese the pinning arrow, like mages can blink from the pin, warlocks can use their portal, and paladins can cast Hand of Protection on the target to break the pin. This will prevent multiple people being pinned as long as you have 3 people spread nicely, and it saves any DPS time that you have to spend breaking the pins.
I mean, the pin will still be there if you do blink out of it, but it won't be doing anything. It will literally just be a target dummy.
Just a little arrow.
Yeah, it might be something useful.
Just dot it up for extra DPS.
It might help you out. So that's more or less it for that guy. And next we're going to talk about Meng the Demented. And the ability that carries over on this guy is Maddening Shout. And this will make everyone... It's almost like a mind control. It makes everyone enemies to each other, so you can actually attack the people in your raid, which is good. So if you don't like the people in your raid, you can actually take it out on them and fucking hit them. And it'll also put a debuff on you that does 65k-ish shadow damage every 3 seconds. Now for everyone to become friends again, you must deal 40k damage to each player, and that's not 40k damage from the boss, that's 40k damage from you per player, and that will break it. And it's important that you break this as quick as you possibly can. The best way to do this is stacking up for it. And raid cooldowns are very, very useful here, because some people it does take a while for them to break compared to others. But if you precast AoE and stuff like that, you can break it instantly.
Now his other ability is Crazed. Now every 0.5 seconds he gains a physical damage increase by a percentage equal to twice his current insanity, which is basically his fury bar. So the more fury, the more damage. And once he reaches 100%, he'll cast Cowardice.
And yeah, Cowardice works more or less the same way as Crazed, but instead of increasing his damage, it causes him to reflect damage equal to 50% his current fury bar. When that reaches 100%, it'll switch back to Crazed. So when his fury is high during the Cowardice, you either need to stop DPS or start healing more, because if he's doing a very large damage reflect and you're critting for fucking 200k, you're going to destroy yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on your setup of healers and their ability to heal, basically.
He'll also frequently cast Crazy Thought. This will increase his fury and insanity by 10, so interrupt it basically.
Yeah. If you have 2 people dedicated to interrupt it and you take turns, that should be more than enough.
However, if he is on 90% of his insanity or something, or of his fury, then what you want to do, you can let that through so he quickly gets out of that phase.
Yeah.
So it's up to you if you want to interrupt it at that point.
Now the last guy we're going to talk about is Zion the Endless Shadow. And the ability that carries over with this guy is Undying Shadows. But obviously if you did get this guy last like we did, then it doesn't really matter, because he's the last guy. He's got nothing to carry on. Once he dies, the encounter's over. Now basically this spell will spawn a skull and a random player that will pulse 30k damage every second within 10 yards until it's destroyed. So you need to make sure that you don't stand near it. And the skull, like I say, it will fixate on a player, and that player needs to make sure that he kites it away from the raid, and ideally up against a wall, because once it does die, it will spawn like a puddle of shit. If you stand in the puddle of shit, then you die. But after the puddle's been down for 30 seconds, the skull will respawn and reappear. So you just need to kill it again. Simple as that. Skulls don't have a lot of health, but that's why ranged are decent on this fight, because melee can't go in and attack the skulls without taking the pulsing AoE damage, which is bad, obviously. Especially if you've gone with like 2 healers. And apart from that ability, he'll also do something called Shadow Blast, which will target a random player and deal a moderate amount of splash damage, and this can be interrupted. I think the splash radius was 8 yards or something, but yeah, it's not a big deal, just interrupt it. And the other ability is Charging Shadows, which is a chain lightning style ability that will do quite a lot of damage as well, and it cannot be interrupted. And the chain range is definitely 8 yards, so you need to make sure that within this phase, if possible, that you spread out 8 yards. It's not a lot of damage. I mean, ultimately you could stack up and just like AoE heal, but it isn't best. I wouldn't recommend it.
So practically this fight is all about the order of the bosses that you get them in, if you're on this sort of thing. So and how you counter the abilities that are brung over.
So, I mean you could just keep wiping until you get an order that you liked, but you can do it in any order. It's not impossible, but yeah, some things are a little bit more frustrating than other. I mean, I personally think that Maddening Shout is probably the most difficult one there to deal with. Well, it's most deadly. The flanking order is a piece of piss. The spinning thing from the Swift guy, the pillage, that move's a piece of piss. And the skull, that's just more annoying than anything else. Yeah. But the Maddening Shout, that's the deadly one. So if you get that guy last, then GG, you should have killed him easy mode. But anyway, that's all we got time for. Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to see more 10-man raid guides, then please do click up on the annotations you see on your screen, and make sure you subscribe for more. Yes, and if this guide did help you, make sure you do give us a thumbs up, because it helps us out rather significantly. Thanks for watching. Thank you.